Last night, many Muslims winced at his choice of words on Sunday.
This crusade, this war on terrorism, is going to take a while.
Crusade. In the Middle East, that invokes powerful images of a Christian army in Muslim understanding at Georgetown University.
If it's disproportionate, it runs the risk of boomeranging throughout the region and playing into all of those who are not terrorists, but many of those who, in the Muslim world, who are mainstream, who believe that we tend to be a hegemon and feel that we can do anything that we want to do.
Many Americans, of course, were horrified at the spectacle of a few Palestinians celebrating in East Jerusalem on the day of the attack. Since then, perhaps to help marginalize that sentiment, many mainstream Palestinians have marched in vigils like this one to honor the dead and injured.
I wasn't surprised to see a certain number of Palestinians celebrating. Actually, I was surprised that it wasn't more widespread, to be honest with you, given the anger here and given the frustration with American policy here. I was disappointed, not because I didn't understand, but because I knew Americans wouldn't be able to understand.
Michael Tarazi, a Palestinian-American who works in the West Bank, says he too was horrified at the human loss. But he also knows the rage runs so deep at the U.S. support for Israel that the attack did prompt a certain satisfaction among some.
It's not lost on any Palestinian that the bombs that are dropped by American-made F-16s, by American-made Apache helicopters. The tear gas that's fired at us is American-made. The bullets that are shot at us are American-made. It's not lost on the average Palestinian that it's America economic support, financial support, military support, and political support that in effect denies us our freedom.
The U.S. support of Israel tops the list of objections to American foreign policy. Indeed, some of the political grievances outlined by radicals, including Osama bin Laden, are shared even by a mainstream public that detests his murderous methods. In this view, the U.S. is not hated for the freedoms we enjoy, as the president suggested, but instead is seen as being hypocritical about them.
The people in the Middle East know the Americans only through their government's policies and practices in the Middle East. And this deserves to be hated by most of the people in the Third World, and especially in the Middle East.
Among the more hated policies is the American support of the ruling and often repressive regimes in Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and Jordan. Not to mention the presence of American troops in Saudi Arabia, home to the holy cities of Mecca and Medina, and the suffering of ordinary people in Iraq that many blame on American-backed sanctions imposed after the Gulf War. Bin Laden himself has often cited the same litany of resentments in interviews.
If you think very carefully, bin Laden says a lot of the same things that Saddam Hussein said when he tried to mobilize what is often called the Arab Street during the Gulf War, appealing to a set of grievances and then trying to justify getting people to turn against their governments and against the U.S., identifying the U.S. as a neo-crusader, neo-imperialist state.
That image, the U.S. as crusading bully, is fortified almost daily in vitriolic propaganda broadcast in much of the Arab world.
By American weapons used by Zionists.
But American diplomats reject the idea that U.S. foreign policy can somehow explain the thinking of those who did this.
I don't think there's any policy change that we could make. We could pull out of Saudi Arabia. They'd obviously prefer that. We could stop backing Israel. Obviously, they'd prefer that. But what they're upset about is what they're trying to achieve is to achieve a Islamic fundamentalist society that's ruled by the kinds of anti-liberal principles that they so strongly support.
Nonetheless, the tension is already running high in places like Pakistan, scene of more anti-American demonstrations today. In this volatile mix, some analysts fear an overwhelming military response will simply strengthen the hand of radical groups in the region. That is why they say it is so vital for the United States to be seen as applying the careful hand of justice, not the clumsy fist of a crusade. This is Chris Bury for Nightline in Washington.